Hello, everyone. My name is Danny, and this review is for All the Money in the World. All the Money in the World follows the kidnapping of 16-year-old John Paul Getty III and the desperate attempt by his devoted mother, Gail, to convince his billionaire grandfather to pay the ransom. When Getty Sr. refuses, Gail attempts to sway him as her son's captors become increasingly volatile and brutal. With her son's life in the balance, Gail and Getty Sr.'s advisor become unlikely allies in the race against time that ultimately reveals the truth and lasting value of love over money. This is a 2017 film, rated R, and I feel like it's about 2 hours. See if I can find that. Yeah, well, it's a little over 2 hours. It says 133 minutes, but it was right about 2 hours. It's good. So, this stars Michelle Williams, Christopher Plummer, Mark Wahlberg, Charlie Plummer, I guess is the young man. So, yeah. So I'll just start off like I do most movies that were big advertisements when they came out. They pretty much showed the same trailer or advertisement for this movie over and over again about Christopher Plummer coming out of his house saying that he would pay nothing for ransom, even though he's the richest guy in the world. That's pretty much all we knew about this movie, and that pretty much told the whole story. When it was coming out, we all saw it, we all knew what was going on, and Christopher Plummer wouldn't pay the ransom. I mean, it's pretty much the whole movie. It doesn't tell anything else about, the manhunt that goes on with the kid or anything in the trailer. So that part was good to hold back a little bit because that was the only other real part of this movie. So I would say that I didn't know what to expect out of it because it was in theaters, and I think a lot of people have seen this already. I just didn't feel like seeing it in theater. When I see True Story and I see most of the movie in the trailer, I usually tend to pass it by in theater and wait a couple months to see it, like I did with this kind of movie. So I'm glad I waited. I didn't think that it was all worth the hype and all the money and all the attention that it got when it was coming out in theaters. I didn't think it really deserved that. So I am glad I waited. The first thing I kind of appreciated with this is when I thought it was only about this kidnapping, there was more to it. There was. I got to be fair with it, that it had a good story. It had detailed situations. It had some surprises. It had good conversations between people. I didn't know how Mark Wahlberg was going to fit in this movie, but he had a lot of good conversations with people. He was a really smart character. He had good things to say. The audience knows that when he's talking, he might be a couple steps ahead of the people around him because they're so rich or they come from a rich lifestyle and they're not very, on the go and frantic like we want them to be. But Mark Wahlberg is there. Like, he's gone to that step already. So there were some good things about the movie and some good characters and good conversations, and I appreciated that going in. I didn't really see that coming. I thought I'd be completely bored, and that wasn't the case. I have to say that it's kind of a typical situation, and when I start hearing the typical stuff, that I get a little like, why do we have to go through this? Like, we've seen this story, we've seen this situation a million times in our life. The father drinks and does drugs. He turns into a wreck. He's a complete tool used by Christopher Plummer. Does whatever he wants, you know. And then the whole situation with the father is just like, I don't know why anybody can't become original. I mean, I know it's a true story and you have to kind of tell it how it is, but basically, I'm wanting you to elaborate on why he is that way. You know, I mean, every movie we watch with a father that drinks, they're just abusive, they're just ugly, they're just, you know, out of control. Nothing ever really changes. And I've seen like two movies in my life, maybe, that the father actually changes in the movie. And sometimes, you know, when that does actually happen, you know, we're actually surprised because it's rare. So the other thing that just, I don't know why we have to watch so many movies with subtitles, but I get really despaired by having to read subtitles. I appreciated most of the people that I felt were struggling with English actually spoke English because I understood most of them. But I think if two people in this movie figured out that each one spoke English, maybe they could just keep having those people speak English. So that was my only problem with that. The subtitles part of the movies of this movie was important. Most of the stuff that was typed out was kind of important, so we needed to follow along. We needed to understand what was going on, and so I stuck with it. I read them all, and I understood what was going on. So it does help. It is vital. I just get really tired of reading subtitles, and I understand people have to make a movie like that, but I just tend to not care for them as much. I'm starting to appreciate movies a little bit more with the other elements that they throw in. And with this movie, it was totally the paparazzi. They were just everywhere. I mean, like, you know, this family is absurdly, obviously rich, and I've never actually heard the name myself of Getty, but obviously this was a much to-do situation back whenever it happened, and the paparazzi, I think, adding to the stress and the franticness of things. You know, every time they were around, you just felt a little bit more. You know, I don't know if it was concern for the family or franticness of trying to find the boy. So, but it added something. It added another layer, and I kind of thought that was good. I don't know why. Just not paparazzi all the time is a good thing, but in this movie it tended to be. It kind of helped along. There were some really good lines that stuck with me. I didn't write them all down, but when the Gail gets to say, they want me to cry or what? You know, like, I just appreciate good writing in movies, and people that aren't superficial or have a character that isn't superficial, they get a really good chance to become real and relate to the audience and jump off the screen. And I'd say Michelle Williams did that in this movie. Her character wants nothing to do with the fortune, wants all she wants is her kids, and she is like the most real character I've seen in a lot of different movies that I haven't liked. You know, maybe there's one bright shining star, and she was it for me in this movie. And the connection between her and the person watching the movie is very strong. And I appreciated that very much. I have to say something about the obvious thing, the elephant in the movie. Paul's ear being taken. I have no idea why they had to show that. I have no idea why they had to show the blood squirting. Ugh. So, anyways, that's just a forewarning for anybody who hasn't seen this movie. It's disgusting. There's a lot of movies like this that are true, that are, you know, that have a reason to keep moving. And a lot of times they just kind of skip by the gory stuff, or they have somebody die off screen. I don't know why they couldn't just, you know, kind of show the aftermath of Paul having his picture taken and his ears bandaged up and everything. It would have been just as effective. and this was not effective at all showing it. It was just gross. This is a very suspenseful film, and it gets more and more towards the end. I'm glad that it kept moving, even though there was a lot of rich people moments that we couldn't connect with. You know, they're having meetings here, and they're talking to each other there, and they're talking about tax write-offs here, and there's a lot of crap that we didn't need in this movie. But it is crazy about how the previews and the whole movie are all about not paying the ransom. And we have to sit through each one of those scenes about talking about all this crap, and then at the very end, the grandfather just pays. Like, and then it has a line at the very end saying something about how he couldn't spend money. I mean, it didn't really make sense at the end. It didn't really connect. They had some kind of battling lines that made each other not making sense. So something's got to make sense. The only thing that is bugging me about this movie, and I had to write it down, is that this family is supposedly rich, right? They have connections. They have, you know, like the kid, his mother is kind of dirt poor, but his father is part of this, you know, huge person, you know, family that they had to make a movie about. When the government, they're going back from Italy to wherever. When governments get involved with a kidnapping of a hugely rich family, like say Barron Trump got kidnapped tomorrow, you don't think that the U.S. government would fork over $20 million to get Barron Trump back like in 2 seconds? That's how we are today. That's how I think of it. So why wouldn't somebody pay for some government, somebody in the world, figure out what the ransom was, pay it to get this kid of this fortune family back? It's a true story about all this struggle between this woman who ends up not really being part of this family and the guy who runs the show, that he has to pay, or else it's like, I'm trying to make sense of it, why the government wouldn't just take over and step in and pay it, or, you know, they had all these resources for getting soldiers to storm this one house. Why couldn't they just, you know, get 17 million together? Maybe it was a different time, different place, and, you know, it's just absurd kind of money. Only one person in the world had that kind of money. And I can kind of understand that, but you got to figure something had to be able to get figured out. And the fact that they didn't think of that, and they're a rich family and they think of everything else, it kind of seems absurd that they would miss the one obvious thing. So I'd have to say that after I've seen this movie, that I'm intrigued. And I was interested most of the time. There was a lot of things that just kind of lagged and didn't need to be in the movie, and they could have kept going, and the movie could have been 15 minutes shorter, and it would have been just fine. So for that reason, I'm going to put this movie in the C range, but I actually kind of enjoyed it. Like, it's one of those movies you don't want to enjoy, but you actually did at the end. So I'll give it a C+. All the money in the world, C+. Good actors. People who sometimes are in different movies, but they did this movie and they excelled in it. It just a lot of different things that could have been different. And I don't want to nitpick it too much, because the overall theme of the movie and my general feeling after seeing it is pretty positive. So I'm just going to try and keep this positive. C+ for all the money in the world. Give it a watch, see what you think. My name is Danny. If you like this or any of my other videos, try and give some of them a watch. Like and subscribe to my channel if you would. And thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy movies.